Alrighty, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the fifth part in our Amazon Vendor Strategy series on the new capabilities of Amazon Display Advertising. My name is Dina Podner and I'm the Marketing Manager at Marketplace Strategy. Marketplace Strategy is a strategic marketplace sales acceleration agency servicing clients from startups to Fortune 100 companies. We manage more than $1 billion in Amazon revenue in a variety of categories, from grocery to personal care, home improvement, electronics, furniture, and many more. Our team includes strategists, designers, writers, and advertising specialists trained and focused exclusively on Amazon. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. If for any reason you have to step away or miss a portion of the webinar, the entire session recording and slide deck will be sent out as a follow-up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the question and answer portion at the very end. Any unanswered questions during the live webcast will be answered via direct email follow-up. Presenting today will be Jeff Walcoff, our VP of Sales and Marketing, and Ben Lemaster, our Amazon advertising and media expert. Marketplace Strategy's advertising team is part of the first group to complete Amazon's new certification program and give feedback on their Learning Console, earning Ben both the Learning Console's early adopter accreditation as well as Amazon advertising sponsored ads in the US Marketplace accreditation, the highest certification available at this time. To give you an idea of today's agenda, we're going to start with why DSP and what's changed from the past, moving into the capabilities and audience data available, and then finish up with the reporting and measuring success of campaigns. And then we're going to end it with a question and answer portion. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to get us started.
Great, thanks, Dina. Appreciate the introduction. All right, so first let's take a little bit of a look at why brands need to be running display in the first place. So for major brands, display has always been a part of the equation through AMG, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But for a lot of smaller mid-sized brands and even a lot of the larger ones, they've invested primarily and sometimes even exclusively in maximizing their AMS presence or Amazon advertising, search, PPC, whatever you want to call it. Consequently, DSP display has been viewed as a nice to have versus a have to have for brands that are really fostering their growth on Amazon. But as Amazon becomes more complex and certainly a lot more competitive, this is changing a lot, and DSP is becoming a more important piece of the equation. So first, what we need to understand is that even for those brands with a strong and successful PPC presence, or those that have worked hard to have a strong presence with organic search, or have worked to maximize conversion rates, there's always going to be a considerable percentage of consumers who don't convert. And obviously, you want to make sure you're continuing to remind those people about the product while they're, while they have intent to buy. So secondly, it exposes the product, your products and the brand, not only to consumers who viewed your pages and not converted through retargeting, but we're also able to target high opportunity consumers searching for similar or competitive products. So through the traditional Amazon advertising, AMS, PPC, we can run product display ads on specific product pages. But this takes that a step further, and we'll get into this further, but you have an array of ways to target via search alone. Finally, if and when you do feel like you've sort of exhausted the opportunity through the PPC side at the bottom of the funnel, DSP is going to open up much more of that, and they are going to allow you to target higher in the funnel in an array of methods using lifestyle and in-market targeting options. And again, ideally, you are never going to run display ads without also having a solid search presence. But Amazon tells us that together, the two platforms can be pretty compelling as far as results. So first and foremost, this is a number that came from Amazon. They report a 10-fold increase in the reach of high-intent consumers when search and display are used together. And then Few other interesting numbers here. Again, these all come from Amazon. At 140% increase in branded searches when search and display are used together. A doubling in sales when remarketing is deployed with search, and a 90% average increase in earned media. But so obviously this is some pretty compelling stuff showing that when you use these together, certainly according to Amazon, the results can be pretty significant. But this webinar is called the Rebirth of Display Advertising. So what does that mean? What is the rebirth? So let's walk through exactly what has changed over the last 6 months and how that affects brands. So first, as I mentioned, one of the major things holding brands back from investing in display, it was quite simply there wasn't much visibility into it. So it was previously controlled pretty much entirely through AMG or the Amazon Media Group. A percentage of a bulk buy-in would go towards display and retargeting, and that was basically all the brands really knew. As of 2018, Amazon has provided access to its DSP platform to select agencies. So why agencies and not specific brands? Well, I think it has to do with the complexity of the DSP platform. They don't really want anybody just jumping in there and tinkering around. There's just so much as far as capability and reporting. It really made more sense for them to provide the access to organizations that had a background in display and in more complex ad platforms. So that's, I think, to this point, why they have only opened this up to select agencies. So what that means is now agencies and by association, their clients can now have full control over their presence on Amazon DSP. So that includes a pretty extensive level of who, what, and where targeting, all of which Ben is going to go over shortly here. And as far as alignment with marketing strategy, these days nothing obviously happens in a bubble as far as marketing strategy. And that was particularly a problem because with DSP, it was, when it was behind a wall controlled by AMG, brands couldn't even align their display with their other efforts on Amazon, let alone across digital. So there was a big missed opportunity there. A couple other differences in the old model. Most brands had pretty limited access to reporting. We heard quite often that brands were investing in AMG, and quite simply, they didn't know if it was working or not because they didn't really get much insight. So, and obviously, not to mention these days, the appetite for data in digital marketing is pretty robust, and there's a higher expectation there. So now, basically, we have the polar opposite. Very extensive reporting capabilities that Ben will also run through in a moment. On the operational side, interestingly, Amazon charges brands a 15% management fee through AMG buys. Due to the cost structure that Amazon's offering its partner agencies, a lot of agencies are actually charging less than that, meaning if you have a set budget that includes both your ad spend plus your money to manage that, through an agency, more money would actually go into the media spend versus the management than previously through AMG. Finally, there's no minimum threshold. So typically AMG was not an option for organizations that weren't willing to have at least a $35,000 buy-in. Through the new path, there are no minimum buy-ins. So brands can basically test things out. They can experiment, slowly ramp up their display presence, versus having to feel like they need to dive in head first and you make a big investment. So one final thing I'll say here is that it sounds a lot like we're disparaging AMG buys, and that maybe your AMG rep or Amazon in general may feel like this is contrary to what they would want you to do. But in fact, they're all for this. So we have direct representatives from Amazon DSP that work specifically with us, and they're promoting this because ultimately, it obviously ties back to revenue for Amazon. Amazon knows that by working with agencies, that's going to lead to larger ad expenditures and more revenue for them. Basically, the agencies are going to spend more time working to make sure that these campaigns are doing well. They're going to diversify, they're going to optimize, they're going to continue to bring them along, and frankly, they're also going to do a better job of conveying the positive results to the brand. So in turn, that convinces brands to spend more. So this is very much something supported by Amazon and something they're very much behind. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Ben, who's going to focus on, he's going to walk through some capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff and Dina. So first thing I want to talk about, although we've got audiences right here on this slide, is I want to talk about the ways that Amazon differs from other audience targeting platforms. Lifestyle audiences and market audiences, these are pretty common terms, regardless of what platform you're working in. The big difference with Amazon is that unlike, say, basing the audience data off of content consumption or online interaction, Amazon bases it all off of shopping data. And this obviously makes sense because people come to Amazon to shop, so that's the data they have to work with. On the other side of the coin, there is the ad inventory on Amazon. A lot of programmatic platforms do not actually tie the message back to the conversion on the exact same platform, but Amazon does. So Amazon has this very secure end-to-end attribution model where they can show you're way on one end of the internet and they're going to bring you back and convert you on Amazon. And a big part of that, like I said, is because the ad inventory is so incredibly high quality on Amazon because, again, it's all based on shopping conversions. People don't really come to Amazon to read an article. They come to buy stuff. Now, diving into actually what these audiences mean. Lifestyle audiences on Amazon are mostly based on longer-term shopping patterns, and it has to do with an interest or in some way indicating that a shopper may be in a particular stage of life. So a common lifestyle audience you may see is somebody with an affinity for a specific musical genre or really excited about a specific film. On the life stage aspect, you might see something like a college-age student. With the in-market audiences, on the other hand, that's much more recent. And it's based specifically and aligned specifically with products and product categories. So rather than having an interest in something, it's literally comes down to you are in market for an upright vacuum cleaner, or you are in market for a granola snack food. So these are a little bit lower in the funnel than lifestyle. It's also because it's more recent. This type of data is more actionable. Amazon also has demographic audiences, which, again, these are pretty universal across most platforms. It's all the standard demographic audiences: age, gender, location, education level, income level, so on and so forth. We don't normally use these on their own. What we can do in, for instance, the example here, is refine in market audience to be a little bit more targeted. So in this case, if you wanted to target a millennial parent with your granola snack foods, you could choose the in-market segment granola snack foods, add the 25 to 34 age group, and then the demographic audience, also presence of children in the household, age 7 to 9. So that's, and the thing about these audiences too that's nice is these are available in the account from day one. Once you're in the account, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to communicate with Amazon or customize anything to have access to these. Any account can run these. So the next slide we're going to jump into is all about retargeting. And this, like Jeff said, you've got the great search campaigns going. You've really turned those up, and you're spending good amount, and you've got great conversion data. There's always going to be attrition one way or the other. Just because you've got the best message or you're getting really high quality traffic, people are still going to leave. People are still going to go to other pages, look at other products, maybe even leave Amazon. The value of these audiences is that this is the best possible way to loop people back into your page and get them back involved in your brand story and your brand's products. So the first of these is simply based on consumers who visited the page. It's very basic and very straightforward. It's someone who looked at a product of yours and has now left. The next one is a little bit more generalized and expansive. So this kind of gets you a little further up in the funnel. It's someone who visited similar product pages. So if you're on a product detail page and you're seeing the similar products like your product you're looking at, that's essentially where this data pulls from. And if you do actually look at these, you'll tend to see, if you have a lot of related products in your catalog, You'll see some of your own products. You'll also see some of your competitors' products. So like at this time, we cannot directly target traffic coming off of a competitor page, but this gets us close. It also means that it could be somebody who looked at something else in your catalog and bought that something else in your catalog, and now you're getting in front of them and getting them to buy something else from you. The search audience that Jeff described is a little further up again. Here we have people who might not have even seen your product, but they're searching for something like your brand name or the product category or a specific product that fulfills a certain need that falls within your product category or product page. If you're familiar with the automatic targeting that we use in the search campaigns, where it essentially kind of matches the page to a user, it's very similar. You'll see, brand search is coming out of there. You'll see stuff aligning with your page copy. You'll see stuff aligning with the product category. So it's all very similar to this, and that's essentially how these are targeted. So a few best practices, or actually one primary best practice here, is if you're running these campaigns and you're not trying to drive repeat purchase behavior, we highly suggest creating a purchase audience, and you would essentially use this to exclude the purchase audience from these ads. So once the goal is achieved and someone's purchased a product, they're going to drop out of the targeting and no longer receive the ad. That really helps us to maximize the impressions we're serving and increase our ad spend, or increase our return on ad spend. Sorry. The final point about these audiences is they have to be created by Amazon. We do not currently have, agencies themselves or brands do not currently have the access to create them themselves. That's going to be changing as time goes on. Amazon is very much interested in rolling this as much out as possible to self-service. They realize it's much better for scale and it's much better for overall growth of the ad business. The other retargeting option we have, and this is more about using your own data, is you can retarget you could send your website traffic back to Amazon. The way you would do this is place pixels on your site, and depending on the quality of your site traffic, you would want to direct certain users back to Amazon. If you happen to sell products on your website and your catalog kind of mirrors your Amazon catalog, that's an easy one because you can find specific products or specific product categories that align with your Amazon catalog and pixel those parts of your website individually and then drive that audience back to the specific product or product category on Amazon. You can also create lookalike audiences with these pixels. Now, it's one of these things where you wouldn't necessarily want to create a lookalike audience for every single user. You'd want to find some way to segment your site traffic so that you can get the high quality people in one spot and create the lookalike audience from that pool, just so that you have the highest quality users going back to Amazon. Even though everybody converts on Amazon, and even though it's very conversion friendly, it still makes sense to drive the strongest audience back. And similarly, just with the retargeting from the product pages, you would want to have a purchase segment the same way built in so that you can kind of exclude the people who have already purchased, again, unless you are trying to drive repeat purchase behavior. So next, now that we've talked about that, we're going to talk about some more ways to use your own data. So in addition to website traffic, you can use a CRM. If you've got a CRM list of high quality customers that you can get a strong return from, you can upload the data into DSP. It will have to be anonymized first, but once it's up there, you can reach them directly. You can also, again, create lookalike audiences and get in front of these people. And it's another great way to kind of take the data that you have in the same way that Amazon uses their data to kind of expand from product pages to similar product pages. This is kind of the same thing. You're taking the data you have on a user and you're expanding to a similar user. So you can kind of increase your reach and also increase your conversions, which helps to mitigate the issue of just hitting a brick wall when you exhaust the bottom of the funnel. DMPs, if you work with a data management platform and you have audiences there that you own, you can also transfer those into DSP as well. And that's something that you would have to coordinate between Amazon and a contact at the DMP, because they kind of have to like work together to send the data through the connection. The DMPs that Amazon currently supports are AdForm, Adobe Audience Manager, DataLogix, LiveRamp, Newstar, and Salesforce. So using your data, whether it's website, CRM, or DMP, is a really great way, in one sense, to really drive home a product launch very, very quickly. You've got audiences you know are like loyal to your brand, love your brand, have purchased your products, so they're likely to purchase something new from you, and they're likely to leave positive reviews. It can really help drive home a strong product launch and gain some sales velocity very early on. So now that we've talked about the different types of people we can target, let's talk about where it can go. And the answer is pretty much anywhere. The DSP can serve all over the internet. We have access to all of the largest ad exchanges. We have access, obviously, to Amazon.com and Amazon Shopping app inventory. We also have access to Amazon-owned sites like IMDb. And Amazon Publisher Services is essentially a system where a website owner can opt in to let Amazon run inventory on their site. Similar to like Facebook has a network like this, Google AdSense is similar. So essentially it can be wherever someone is. They can be searching for a product on an app, they can be reading an article on a website, we can still get in front of them there and drive the message there. One other thing that is very important to note about Amazon's supply and inventory sources is that they take brand safety incredibly seriously, and they are constantly working to make sure that your ads are not going to be showing on questionable websites. It's one of the benefits, because not that other programmatic platforms don't care, but Amazon makes it a big part of the mission statement when it comes to this platform, to make sure that brands feel secure, knowing their ads aren't going to be like serving somewhere, tarnishing their reputation, and hurting the brand image. So now that we've gone through the who and the where, let's jump into the what. And this is the type of ad content that we can serve. So just like any programmatic platform, you can serve static display ads, you can serve video display ads, and they recently rolled out about a month or so ago pre-roll and mid-roll video on connected devices, something like a TV enabled with a Fire Stick or a Fire TV, and essentially that's a way to get in front of people who are in the middle of streaming content. A lot of people would rather have free content to stream and watch an ad in exchange than necessarily, pay the premium to get ads completely gone. So a benefit really to those pre-roll and mid-roll videos is that if someone's got like their phone in front of them and they're looking at it and watching TV, or even if they're not looking at it and watching TV, they might see something in one of these videos that would cause them to go ahead and open up their phone and look for a product on Amazon. In fact, it's like 65% of all people who have a second screen in front of them while they're streaming content will go ahead and search for a product. So this is one of these things where, in much the same way that Jeff talked about how display impacts the entire funnel, it's one of these things where it's just another part of the customer journey, and being able to get in front of them there is incredibly beneficial. In addition, like an internal Amazon survey reported that 20% of Amazon visitors have actually purchased products based on content they saw while in these videos while streaming content, either like connected device, Fire TV, so on and so forth. But anyway, the larger ad here on the side is something I really want to talk about, because these ads are specific to Amazon, and they're essentially designed to deliver the most relevant message at the most relevant time. The way they work is they kind of change according to your behavior. So if you've been spending a lot of time over the past few weeks reading reviews and doing a lot of research and not exactly buying, and this ad is shown to you, you would see the ad in the top right-hand corner. You can see the review snippet. You can see the star rating. Now, if you click the ad, what's going to happen is instead of going to necessarily the product page itself, you're going to be dropped directly onto the review. So you can read the review in its entirety, which will, again, move you closer to the point of making the purchase. And this is something that when we create these, we choose which reviews we are going to actually extract to put in the ad, and that's a big part of it too. Based on a specific campaign goal, we can get very specific with which kind of review we want to put in here. Now, in the lower left-hand corner, with the Add to Cart button, that's the type of ad you would see if you had been doing a lot of one-click shopping lately. And the benefit here is that if this is, a product that you're interested in, you don't even need to take the time to go to the product page and learn about it. If you want to buy it right then, you can. You can click the Add to Cart button. It'll drop into your cart, and you can either continue shopping on other pages, or you can check out immediately. The ad that is in the lower right-hand corner with the Shop Now call to action button, that's kind of like the default setting if there's not a review and if you're not the kind of person who's going to add it to the cart directly from the ad. So if you're looking at this ad and you click it, you would end up on the product detail page. And from there, you could kind of like do your research or, read questions and answers, kind of like a product specs, that kind of a thing. If a coupon is live on the product at the time you see it, the coupon ad that is up in the upper left-hand corner would essentially swap out with the Shop Now call to action button. So that's how these ads function. And like I said, they're incredibly useful because of the way they transform based on your recent behavior. Again, going back to this like in-market idea of like recency and you're tied to a product, this is going to be very much tied to like your behavior at the time you see the ad. So based on what you're doing, it could actually change if you see the same ad week to week. Now, the biggest benefit of these outside of this highly relevant message is that 23%, there's a 23% increase in purchase rate when using these versus something like a static display ad that just has a message on the product and things like that. So the next thing I want to address is a question that we get a lot, and that is, what if I don't sell on Amazon? Can I still run on DSP? And the answer is absolutely. There are a couple limitations, and we have to do things a little bit differently based on the sector your brand lives in. But it's very much a possibility. It's never something where Amazon doesn't want to exclude anybody. So, for instance, if you are selling products on your website but not selling products on Amazon, you can run DSP. However, the inventory that you would get on Amazon.com and the shopping app is not available. You would only be able to run through Amazon Publisher Services and the exchanges, things like that. The main reason is that Amazon sees you selling on your site but not on their site as a conflict of interest. So while they're happy to, service your ad business, they don't want you getting in front of customers and potentially driving them away from the site. I would say that's a pretty small percentage of the people who, want to run DSP. In most cases, people are either selling products on Amazon and their site, or, in something like a financial sector or the insurance sector. Telecommunication is another one. We see like Verizon spends money on Amazon. And a big part of this is, again, going back to the issue of high quality ad inventory, people know that when people are on Amazon, they're in a shopping mindset. So getting in front of them at that point in their decision-making journey is incredibly impactful. Now, I'll be getting into attribution shortly, but I want to point out, as it pertains to any campaign like this, where we're driving traffic off of Amazon and converting on a website, there is a bit of a gap there. So what we would be doing in this case is we wouldn't be necessarily relying on Amazon's reporting for attribution. We would have to rely on a third-party attribution mechanism, and in this case, like DCM tags, the main one I use, because they're pretty ubiquitous, and we can create ads with the DCM tags built in, and then kind of like upload them into DSP and run them from there. At the same time, we would want to go ahead and take the like an Amazon conversion pixel and have that on your site as well, just because that's what's going to really help us feed information back to the platform so that the platform knows what it's doing, learns quickly, and can optimize toward that goal. So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach here with attribution if we're driving someone to your website, but you're not selling stuff on Amazon. So on to reporting. First thing we're going to talk through is forecasting. So now that you know who you're getting in front of and where you want to serve the ads and what kind of ad you're serving, you will want to take a look at what your budget is compared to the available impressions. It's important here to be aware of what the inventory is so that you can make sure that you're getting, most bang for your buck. The other thing to keep in mind is that if there is very, very high inventory, the competition is likely low, which means you can bid much lower than you would if you are in a much more aggressive space like Amazon. Although the ad quality is high on Amazon, the inventory is also low. So you need to bid very aggressively there to make an impact. During any kind of like peak season or promotional period in your marketing calendar, you need to make sure that you're getting very aggressive in terms of monitoring bids and frequencies and increasing impression frequency as needed to really get in front of people as frequently as possible. It's one of these things where there's so many distractions in the digital world that you have to make sure that you're not going to let those distractions get between your message and the customer. So upping your frequencies significantly is going to help you really push home those conversions. So on to the sales and attribution reporting in DSP. If you're familiar with the search reporting from Amazon as far as attribution is concerned, you understand that there's the 14-day window. So 14 days after any click on a search ad, the sale is counted back to that ad. Anything outside of the 14 days, unfortunately, doesn't count. But so DSP uses that same attribution window, but unlike search, DSP also counts views as a source of a conversion. Now, it's designed to deduplicate across the platform, not only within DSP, but also across search. So any Amazon search campaign is not going to be double counting a conversion that came from a DSP campaign and vice versa. The big thing to keep in mind with the views is that views do not receive like credit if an ad was clicked. So if you see an ad and don't click it, which is actually an incredibly common behavior for people exposed to display ads, and after not clicking it but seeing it, you go search for the product, end up on an organic listing, and buy that product, it's going to count it back to the view. But if you happen to see another ad, whether it's display or search, on your way to that product page, and you click that ad and end up on the product page, the sale is attributed back to the click. So that's clicks generally are considered more intentional than views, although views do have an incredible value because again, it's a matter of constantly pushing those messages out there. So the final piece that I want to talk about with the sales reporting is that same as search, you will see halo conversions as well. So although it's a little bit different, in search it segments it very cleanly between what was advertised and what was not advertised. In DSP, it counts it as one big whole. So you'll see the product sales column here. That is just what was advertised, and the total product sales includes everything in the catalog as well as the product sales. So because it's looking at the impact of the larger catalog, it will go ahead and include everything in that larger number. So the next thing is some of the more Amazon-specific data. I mean, DSP does offer standard programmatic metrics, impressions, clicks, CTR, and so forth. But the Amazon-specific data are things like detail page views and review page views, adding a product to your cart, adding products to a wish list, gift list, or registry, and subscribe and save enrollments. And with subscribe and save enrollments, it only counts the first charge. It will not count additional charges. It will not count renewals. It has to be a fresh subscribe and save. The real importance of these metrics is the way that the nature of them being like one step on a journey to purchase can result in them falling outside of the 14-day attribution window. So if you add something to your cart, come back a little bit later, decide you don't want to buy it yet, and keep delaying, you might end up buying it on the 21st day after you've added it. Kind of the same thing with lists. If you add something to your list, it could be 6 months before you buy it. Or, you could assemble a registry for a baby shower, and your invitees don't buy something until the week before the baby shower. So a lot of times these, metrics are valuable in understanding what other types of action and what other types of impacts can these campaigns have on my business. The final thing in terms of latent effects and whatnot would be pixeling your website. If you pixel your website, say something like, say, a pixel on the home page and a pixel on a conversion page, even if you're not using it for remarketing purposes, just to track latent effects of the campaign, you will be able to see when people get to the home page. You'll be able to see them getting to the conversion page. You won't be able to segment between, say, like a paid search click on Google and an organic click on Google, but you will know that these things are happening, so you can then refer back to your website data and see, what kind of increases came from search traffic on through an AdWords campaign, or what kind of increases came from organic search traffic. Also, did purchases occur? Did any other kinds of conversions occur, like signing up for an email newsletter or something like that? So these are all important things to keep in mind as how these campaigns are going to affect the entire funnel again. So the next report we're going to get into is a little bit more of an optimization tactic, and this basically lets you see what audiences you're targeting and how they overlap with other audiences that you are not targeting. So in the top 2/3 of the screenshot, those are the audiences that you are targeting, and the bottom third are audiences that you are not targeting. Here, as an example, if you're targeting in-market people who want to buy vacuum cleaners, that's something that you can see is performing well. But if you happen to see that there's a strong overlap with in-market for toys and games, and they're performing well and converting at a high rate, it would make sense to go ahead and generate a different initiative to get in front of the toys and games customers, and again, draw them into your funnel, drive them to conversion. And the final report I'm going to talk through is this Retail Insights report, which was rolled out I want to say just a few weeks ago. This is relatively new, but this is, again, contributes to the overall understanding of the campaign. For instance, the graph in the middle, how frequently do my promoted products appear in search results? That's just showing before the campaign started compared to how during the campaign, and if the campaign has ended, what changes occurred at those 3 points before, during, and after. In the case of this graph, the organic search impressions increased 4-fold. So while it's one of these things, back when we had our AMS webinar, we talked about using search and the premium analytics reporting to track organic lift by driving a ton of paid traffic through unbranded keywords. This is very similar to that, where we can see how are your organic rankings flourishing based on your display advertising. The graph up in the corner with the dotted line, and that is really more about how people are getting to your pages and to what degree are they converting at a higher rate than before. In this case, page traffic increased about 6%, or sixfold compared to the before and after, or before and during, and the orders increased about 3.5-fold before and during. So traffic went up, conversion went up. Again, this is one of these things that is really, really useful to understand because things can fall outside of those attribution windows, and it does really impact the entire funnel. So the final thing we want to get into, and again, this is similar to if you listen to our search webinar back in the spring, is the future. We're always like excited for new things and what can happen, what can change. So some developments we'd love to see in 2019, in addition to all the self-service stuff getting rolled out, obviously, is being able to get back in front of customers who have added an item to a wish list or their cart and haven't purchased it. That would be incredibly beneficial because we could, have some very specific messaging suited to those people. Another one would be if we have subscribe and save, who are either coming up on renewal or whose subscriptions have lapsed. Being able to get back in front of those people and increase their loyalty and those subscriptions would be incredibly useful. In the case of someone who lapsed, we could maybe like offer a coupon if they re-sign up, something like that. Obviously, like I said, we can't get to specific competitor pages like we can with product display ads or the product targeting offered in the sponsored product ads, but being able to retarget site traffic from specific competitor pages would also be great. It would give everybody a leg up on the competition. And finally, customers who are viewing a gift list or a registry but have not purchased something off the gift list or registry would be really interesting, because in this case, most people who are adding the products to a gift list or registry are not the people buying it. So in that case, you're getting in front of a totally different audience who didn't do the original conversion. So again, it's a matter of expanding the funnel and just increasing conversions.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for all of that valuable information, Jeff and Ben. We are now going to move into the question and answer portion, but this is just a reminder, if you have to jump off, that the slide deck will be sent up as a follow-up, as well as the video recording of this webinar. All right, so moving into the questions, it looks like the first one we have here is, what would you consider the value of a view versus a click?
Something like the value of view versus a click changes based on a lot of conditions. If you, so say you see the ad and you buy it the same day within a matter of hours after having seen the ad, I would say it gets a pretty high percentage, probably something like, 80, 90, 100% of the sale would be credited to the view because it's such a recent experience. If it's something where you see the ad and you don't necessarily buy for a week or two, then that could be a very different. I would say at that point, it would be weighted far lower. You wouldn't necessarily be as influenced by the view as you were before. But again, this is one of these things that we want to it's why it's important to manage impression frequency. So you can increase those views and increase that messaging. As far as generally, overall, if we were to just not account for time lapse, I would say we could probably go ahead and give a view about say 15 to 20% of the credit for the majority of the sales, something like that. I think that probably seems reasonable, consider accounting for things like time lapses.
Great, thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
The next question we have here is, can you give some examples of ways that attribution is more advanced than search?
Oh, of course. So as we discussed during the webinar, one of the ways is that we can actually track views. So a common thing we'll see on our search campaigns, if they're only running search, is as we increase ad budgets, overall sales in the catalog increase. And this again comes down to the fact that with more budget, we have more firepower to win more impressions. And while they may not get clicked, people do see the products, they do see the brand name, they will end up converting at some point. So not being able to track views on the search side is kind of a bummer, but we can do that in display that we can't do on search. Another thing, though, like I said, all of those like very specific details, like add to list, add to cart, subscribe and save, those don't necessarily fall inside of attribution on search either. So that's another something we get from display that we don't get from search. Hopefully that will change, because it's one of those things. It's always more data is always better.
All right, and it looks like our last question here today, in respect to everyone's time, is why can't brands do self-service display?
Yeah, and Jeff alluded to this a little bit earlier. And I think what it comes down to really is these are very powerful tools. There's a lot going on in here, and so rolling it out to brands directly is a risk that Amazon might not want to take at this time. They like to be under control of a lot of stuff. We work directly with Amazon on even things like getting an advertiser like approved so that we can begin running the ads, things like this. So even we're not completely alone and completely self-service. We're still bound to Amazon in some way. I think a larger aspect of it, though, is it only recently rolled out from AMG to self-service in the spring. So it's still somewhat not fully matured. I could see at some point, maybe years down the line, Amazon sees the need to scale further and decides to offer it to like select brands, but I would expect it to be a pretty rigorous process. And then it looks like we have another question. What kind of metrics should we also look at in addition to ROAS if it is a purchase-driven campaign? And that's a fantastic question. As I said, I do think that it's important to keep track of stuff like the subscribe and saves and the wish lists that are most likely not going to show the full value right from the reporting. The other thing is the Retail Insights report is a really great way to look at that stuff as well. But even outside of the ad reporting, it's important to be looking at your overall sales reporting. So in the case of something like if you have premium analytics reporting and you do notice that you're getting a lot of increase in organic search impressions as a result of your display campaign, go ahead and look in your search rankings in the reporting and see, are you actually noticing that the rankings are increasing? While that's not necessarily directly related to purchase, what happens over time is that sales velocity will increase your rank from both a paid and organic standpoint. So that's a much longer term effect, but I still think that would be something important to pay attention to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Have a happy holidays and happy new year, and we will be back at the start of the new year. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.